All right, we should be live now. All right. So thank you for joining our monthly query research progress update again. It's been a little over a month since last time, but in the summer period, things sometimes need to shift a bit. Our high-level goal is still the same as usual, abstracting read-write interaction over decentralized environments. These are still the people working on query research topics. The format is still the same as usual, so 3 slides per researcher, high-level goal, accomplishments of last month, and then targets for next month. So let's immediately dive into it. And the first person in the queue is Maarten.
Okay. So my goal is to optimize decentralized querying as usual by using aggregators with incremental processing. So aggregators will do all the computations beforehand and then make them available. And then update the views with incremental processing. So updating the views incrementally instead of redoing them. So what I've worked on mainly is going to ESWC, where I presented 2 things. One, the incremental query engine that I made, and then second is the decomposition paper with query decomposition. It went well. It was fun. Good times. And that's took most of the time, I think. And then the second thing is the internal review, of my promote. My incremental joins paper or journal, and I've been slowly working on that too. It's almost done in pages now, which is maybe not ideal, but maybe something things can be removed. I don't know. And then finally is an RDF parser in Golang. I needed this for the aggregator, so I quickly actually made implementation of it. It's not the fastest, but it's fast enough, I think. And then, the next targets that I will be working on is the proof of concept. It's actually the second thing, but I work on the proof of concept aggregator. So now that I have the parser, I can actually implement it or integrate it and continue working on the proof of concept. And then second is working on the an Elevate. So Elevate is a workouts application, I guess, that tells you how you've been working out. And it's actually a nice dashboard. So actually making a binding for that to solids, and then eventually making sure that there's also the aggregator between it that actually does most of the computations beforehand. So the nice dashboards is more responsive. And that's everything for me.
So for your ESWC presentation, how well was Incremunica received there, and any lessons learned for your journal paper?
I was happy because there were no comments from the chair organizer, which I assume is always a good thing. So the presentation was clear at least, but there was no comments on oh, this doesn't work or whatever. It was pretty well received, just in general, questions of how stuff works and interest in it. Well received, I guess.
Very good. And any potential users of the tool you encountered?
I don't think so. I don't know. No one came to me and showed interest in going to use it. I think
They will come.
they will come. No, but I did. I went to some symposium a month or something ago, and there's actually someone that is interested in incremental view maintenance in general, but in Rust and not in JavaScript then. What I actually also did is quickly looked at the proxy graph and checked how difficult it would be to make that incremental, and the answer is very. So because it just used normal iterators and not async iterators in it anyway. So it only took an hour or 2 to actually check it how it works. But
cool. Any other questions for Maarten? Yes, Pierre-Antoine.
Hi. Yes. Thanks. And sorry, I was a little late. I missed the first part, but I see on this slide you mentioned RDF Go parser. My question is, does it parse Turtle? And if so, did you consider Turtle 1.2? The new features are still in the making, but in RDF 1.2.
I do Turtle and Endquads, and no, I did not consider 1.2. I actually needed a parser in Go, and probably I will eventually do it, but yeah, now I just needed it to continue work. So that's why I made a rough, not a rough implementation, because it is spec compliant, but not 1.2 spec compliant.
Fair enough, but this is a very interesting question. We are planning to go to CR not too late now, and so we will be looking for implementations to fulfill the criteria. And also I would have been interested in feedback on how RDF 1.2 increases the difficulty of writing parsers, but I totally understand. I mean, it's still early. Thanks.
Are there actually spec tests for 1.2 already? Yes. Okay.
Short answer is a few, but we still need to iron that up. We are right now in the process of doing that.
Okay.
But there are quite a bit of them already.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe in the summer I'll do it if I have some time and bored.
So, Maarten, you're writing a parser for RDF in Go, right? Have you seen RDF to Go yet?
Yes, but it sucks.
Okay, that makes sense.
The reason I made the implementation is because I couldn't find a proper implementation of things. I think RDF to Go was just their store. RDF store was just an array.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that took forever.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So
just making sure. Yeah. There's no way that there's not something in RDF and Go, right?
It was very limited. And a lot was not actually up to spec, or yeah, there were a lot of issues with all the implementations that I found. Or you need to have like a separate, there's like a C++ or something implementation that a lot of other languages make bindings to. So you had to first like create that C++ thing and then have the binding. So it was a lot of work to actually have it in Go. Yeah, that's the reason. But yeah, good feedback.
All right, let's move forward over to Brian.
So my current high-level goal is to optimize traversal queries using explicit publication data publication structure. So yeah, it hasn't changed. I can go to the next slide. So this month I've resubmitted my paper that I first submitted to ISWC. So yeah, I'm waiting for the feedback, for the review for this. I've also spent some time to work on the Real World Federation paper from Elias. So mainly what I did is do some analysis of the query that we use. So I've extracted some feature. I categorized them basically on the feature and also on the time complexity. I've also started to do some work to formalize backset semantic query containment using first order logic. Then I haven't finished it yet, so it is for my query containment solver for a project that we do to optimize federated queries using materialized view. I've also started to work on a journal extension of my ISWC paper. So what I plan to do is to add more measurement metrics. So to analysis of the continuous performance, so using the efficiency metric, using the time for the first result to arrive, the time also it takes for the query to actually terminate, because sometimes you get the last result, but you still traverse a lot. And also want to add an analysis of the influence of the reduction of HTTP requests with the reduction of query execution time, because the approach is, the core of the approach is to reduce the number of HTTP requests, but I want to see if how it actually influences in general the execution time. And I've also started to make a plan for another extension of my ISWC paper, where I will be doing some query planning. The general goal, the general idea would be to formalize the traversal query processing as some sort of federated queries with a dynamic federation. You can go to the next slide. So for this month, I'm planning to continue the implementation of my query containment solver, and I'm planning also to continue my journal extension, so to calculate more metrics, for instance, the R3 metric from Ruben E, also having a better Oracle for source selection, because the one that I had in this paper doesn't consider the topology, and Ruben E made one that considered the topology, so I plan to evaluate based on that. To do also some analysis of the time complexity, and to do some writing with the new metric that I will add, and a bit more formalization, since I will have more space to do it. And that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So when are you leaving to France again?
The 1st of September.
Hi, Brian. Can you say a bit more about the topology aware aspect, please?
Yes, it's because when we do our query, it's really dependent on what is the starting point and which document that you actually follow. And I made an Oracle to compare the ratio of relevant resources that we query, because a lot of traverse that you do is not query relevant, and I want to actually follow the topology, because right now I just look at the overall network and see which resource is query relevant, but it does not consider that you actually started at a specific point, and from this specific point you can go to another document and so on.
But which kind of, I'm trying to understand, so which kind of aspect of the topology do you take into account? Is it the linked data topology? Is it the internet topology? Which level are you at? That's the first question. And how these aspects affect the efficiency of your algorithm?
So is the topology, because we have our knowledge graph, or overall knowledge graph of the whole data set, and this knowledge graph is materialized into multiple files. Because we are using a solid bench, in the case of solid, so each file has multiple files with actual RDF data, and is the topology of those files are the nodes, and the edges are triple that will lead you to another file, basically.
Okay, so
it's
that's
like a materialized network in a way.
Okay, so that's the linked data topology. Okay, and so let's say you have already looked at one document, you find that triples linking it to other documents or the sources. Which kind of that topological aspect will you consider? What I'm trying to understand is, for instance, if you look at the topology of the graph, you may be interested in the degrees of the nodes as an indicator of their centrality. That would be a topological aspect. But it could also be the number of in degrees and the size of the out degrees. It could be many topological aspects. So I'm trying to understand which one of the topological characteristics of the linked data graph would be of interest to you.
Because this is not really what I'm trying to measure. Basically, what I'm trying to measure is the ratio of relevant sources, because when we are doing link traversal, we traverse a lot of documents that are actually not relevant for the query execution. And the previous Oracle that I had didn't consider that. It's basically considered that from any node you can go to any other node. So now I want to have one that actually consider the graph, the topology of our network. But I don't really do an analysis of the degree of the edges and so on.
Okay, and that topology, would you consider any link, or do you intend to include the semantics of the links in your topological analysis?
Because it's more of I consider basically the where provenance of my data, and this is what I'm trying to. Yeah, this is what I'm trying to analyze. If those documents are actually relevant, or if they could have been skipped somehow with a better approach. Because the goal of my approach is to reduce the number of irrelevant links that we are dereferencing.
Okay, there's just to let you know, a few years ago, we had the best paper award at ESWC with one of my postdoc, where we trained a machine learning system in predicting whether a source will be relevant or not in terms of getting data. In case you go in that direction, maybe something we can discuss.
Yeah, can you send the paper in the chat?
I will share it to you. Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian? If not, let's move forward to Ruben.
Okay, so my high-level goal is still the same. I want to do some client-side query optimization approaches for link traversal, which means we use the fact that there's one engine instance serving one user, which will have some implications for the way the engine is used. What I worked on is basically I resubmitted this paper on investigating link prioritization, not pruning, but prioritization, and resubmitted it to ISWC. My conclusion slightly changed because I improved my query sort of execution tracking and processing of data, because I now have better data basically, and it's sort of slightly changed the conclusion the way that link prioritization actually is worse than expected, even worse than on the sort of open data web. Even the Oracle algorithm, while it performs way better in terms of actual prioritization in some cases where it actually matters, the execution time doesn't really improve that much. So even if we do a perfect algorithm, miraculously, we only get like a maybe 10% increase or improvement in query execution time. So it's kind of let's not touch that for now conclusion. Then for the benchmark of query sequences, so to benchmark caching approaches as such, I finished sort of defining the model that I want to use to generate these sequences. And I'm also implementing it, and I'm actually more than halfway done now from the time that I wrote this. I'm getting close to finishing the third sort of pattern that I've identified in sort of real world scenarios and want to simulate. Finally, I have been investigating how to use derived resources. So these are resources on a solid pod, which sort of are a result of, for example, a query executed over all the data in the pod. And it's kind of difficult because it's about exclusive groups and sort of using triple patterns in a certain order and making sure that you don't do double work or that you don't do duplicate results. I've been considering using a sort of Alice-like operator in Communica, so I can dynamically reroute these tuples and sort of use whatever subquery that is contained in the query that is being executed and found in the derived resources. But that's also not easy because Communica isn't really made to use Alice. I might be able to use it, but I will have to investigate and do some prototyping before I really go all in on this. So there's no real plan yet. There's a small sort of plan. Okay, so my next target is I want to finish implementing this sort of query sequence generation and hopefully also include it in the Sparkle benchmark runner, because then I can actually make an experiment in solid bench, blah, 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 or JDR. Then I want to use that benchmark to sort of benchmark a simple caching algorithm, and currently it doesn't really work that well because it caches also the next links it should follow, but those next links depend on the query. So if you reuse that cache, then you'll get the wrong links if the query changes. It's not too difficult to fix, but I should fix it. And then finally, I want to finish this plan of how to include the right resources in the query plan in a nice way that doesn't require like backtracking and restarting, because that I prefer not to.
Okay. Thanks for the updates. Yes, Brian.
What do you mean by backtracking in that situation?
Well, basically, it's throwing away work. I think that's most commonly used for backtracking. Like if you do adaptive query processing, if you throw away some work because you can't use it, you're backtracking in that sort of query execution.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, it's what Jonni did, but then in the extreme case, Jonni basically backtracked to the start of the execution and did like a full redo of the whole query plan.
Okay, because I didn't understand the difference between restarting and backtracking, but now I think I get it.
There's a slight difference, a small difference. It's basically the same.
Okay, and like for the Eddies approach, how feasible do you think it is at the moment to use it? And if it's not feasible, do you have a fallback plan?
I'm not sure how feasible it is, because I thought it was not feasible because of the sort of the pooling mechanism of async iterators. But you told me there might be a push method, so I have to investigate if I can actually use that one, if it's sufficient. Yeah, as a fallback, I'm not too sure yet. I have to do more reading and see what type of other approaches there are.
No, okay. Any last questions for Ruben? Yes.
Just at least does it actually produce correct results, or is it like, or could there be issues when doing it? Because I actually can't remember. I read the paper 3 years ago, but I can't remember if it actually produced correct results or.
I think it should be correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. That would be a weird paper if they said, yeah, I sort of approximately answered this query. Good luck.
Yes,
that
exists.
Approximate query answering. I guess it also works.
It's
called an LLM actually.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the only danger is that some tuples might not be answerable based on like the order in which things were executed. So you need to determine beforehand precisely like which combinations of orders are possible to execute a tuple, and then you need to make sure that proper operators can handle these. I vaguely remember something, a danger in that direction.
So there's a possibility that you still have to redo everything because you have that situation where you actually can't solve it anymore. You need to redo it to actually solve it.
But I'm sure there are techniques to detect that somehow. Okay, if nothing else, let's go to Jonni.
Okay, so sorry about being late. I took the bus. So I'm investigating client-side query optimization techniques for linked data. So my goal is to just look into any techniques that hopefully would not depend on the server implementation or initial server side. So yeah, that's my goal. And what I did, I finished a small demo of a hybrid query setup for Solid and Sparkle endpoints. It was actually pretty simple. I just forgot to set some traversal flags initially. So, but yeah, it also assumes prior knowledge of the exact sources, for example, the exact solid port URI and the Sparkle endpoint URI to work. And also there were some issues with bind join and nested loop join that produce a lot of HTTP requests. So there is definitely potential for improvements in the query planning.
And can you maybe summarize what the query plans look like at the moment?
Well, it basically pulls, like, it gets the bindings from the link traversal, and then it sends every binding to the Sparkle endpoint. Does that clarify?
Well, the relevant thing to mention here is that it essentially decomposes everything or splits everything up at a triple pattern level. So the triple patterns are sent or virtually sent to the solid bot and the Sparkle endpoint, and then it's unioned at triple pattern level.
Yes, and then because it pulls with nested loop join, it pulls the bindings from the link traversal, and then it goes and checks every binding at the Sparkle endpoint, and then that's a lot of HTTP requests.
Yeah. So that's then the opportunity for improvement in next steps. But at least we have a baseline now.
Yes, so it works if I just use a symmetric hash join and hope that the query doesn't contain anything that doesn't, because currently I think there's also a bug where Communica tries to join, if there's 3 triple patterns and you can join all of them together, but not the first one and the last one, then Communica tries to join the first one and the last one and then throws an error. But that's something Ruben E also ran into, and he had a solution, so that's on the radar. And then I also, benchmarking wise, I expanded the join plan restart benchmarks for a journal extension. And the conclusion seems to be that after updating everything to Communica version 4, all the improvements from the original paper seem to have disappeared, or at least most of them. Only the worst case is better. I repeated the experiments with mixed fragmentation, so not every solid pod looks the same, like structure-wise, and also with a uniform setup where every solid pod basically has identical structure, and I just cannot achieve the improvements I had in the original paper anymore. So I'm assuming it was because of the erroneous blocking hash join back in when the original benchmarks were made, that somehow maybe was blocking it so badly that even restart helped. That's my theory so far, but I still have to look into the exact results. The restart,
you also saw reductions in total execution time, right?
yes.
But then blocking versus non-blocking should not have an influence on that, right?
Yeah. But for some reason, also the total execution time is now approximately the same.
Yeah.
So I have to double check that it's actually that way. Yeah. But it does, like the other restart-based approaches do produce the results in a more with tighter variance. When you look at how the arrival times vary between queries and stuff, then it produces them more consistently. So the variance is less, and then sometimes also the worst case is better, at least. And also the best case is worse. But, and then I also finished some initial runs of Wikidata Federation benchmarks. I think I had this last time as well, but I was going to look into manual analysis because the queries don't really work. So now the goal is to find out why they don't work. And then I did a lot of writing. I submitted the camera ready for ICWE on joint restarts with the old results. because they were valid at the time 2 years ago. Now I feel bad about it, but that's what it is. And then I'm currently extending the joint primary start date for the journal. Yeah. My next target is to basically finish the Wikidata analysis of why the queries don't work, and then also finish the final benchmark runs for joint primary start, and then do a lot of writing for a talk. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, for the journal extension benchmark runs, we definitely have to look into why. Yeah, why after updating to Communica v4, the performance difference doesn't exist anymore. Because I don't think it will be caused by blocking versus non-blocking operators. Like it can definitely have an impact on like metrics like the efficiency, but on total execution time, it shouldn't matter. Any other questions for Jonni?
Yes. I wasn't sure when you talk about the loss of performance. At some point you said that the total execution time was less, and at other time you said that it wasn't. Oh, basically I didn't really understood what's happening.
Oh, it's for some of the setups, like with the way the restart is configured. Sometimes the worst, for some configurations, the worst case is better, but then.
But what is the worst case when you have multiple query template, or the worst case when you run multiple times you experiment the same query multiple times?
So basically so
is it a question of repetition, or it's a question of different query template, different instantiation of the templates?
No, it's a question of different, because the template instantiations are the same. The data is the same. I changed the engine config.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the engine, the worst case for the specific engine config, like some engine configs have better worst case than others.
Okay, so worst case is the overall all the queries that you ran.
Yes.
So the whole suite of.
Yes, because I couldn't find a way to compare them in a way that would, like, the way I compare them is that I basically add up all the, for each, like I add up all the query execution times, which is probably not a good metric, but if I just average them, then the average will be somewhere between the worst and the best. So I just decided to just add them all together and see what the sum is for per template, the highest execution time, and then also the same for the lowest, and then for the average.
Okay, so you compare.
So for each combination, doing an aggregate of all the query instantiations and taking like the worst and the sums of. I don't know if it's like I still have to basically ask Ruben T for feedback on that. But I'm trying to find a way to compare all the templates and the configs without having a lot of data to look at.
Okay, because it just seems to me that there is different types of queries. So if you compare everything together, you cannot know if your approach performs better with certain type of queries and not with others.
Yeah, but
yeah, just one type of query that performs extremely bad with your approach and just put everything down, or if you die.
Yeah, just taking the sum also doesn't look like a good approach to it, because there's a lot of loss of information. But yeah, let's discuss that offline. All right. If nothing else, I think we're at the end of today's meeting. It's a bit shorter because 2 people are on holidays at the moment. Next progress update meeting is planned at the end of August, so August 26th, again at 9:30. Okay, thanks all for joining today. Unless there are any final remarks or questions or announcements, we'll keep it at that for today. All right, thanks all for joining and see you next time. Bye all.
Bye-bye.